It seems that just about everyone these days is talking about CRT, critical race theory.
No one knows exactly what it is. They know it has something to do with race, and it's some kind of a theory.
Critical race theory essentially argues that racism is baked into all the systems of American society, and that any sort of neutral system is in fact a guise for racial power.
It's a legal theory essentially that breaks down the races into oppressors and oppressed. Some races are on the oppressor spectrum, and some are on the oppressed spectrum, that they have suffered from historical grievances, and that because of that, certain races can't succeed in relation to others.
Critical race theory used to be found only in the academic lounges of elite universities, but then it filtered down into the classrooms, even of state colleges, and now it's being taught even at lower levels of education, and parents don't like it.
Who pays your salary? Shame on you!
What had been planned as a typical school board meeting in Virginia's wealthy Loudoun County this week devolved into pandemonium.
Shame on you! Shame on you!
I think many parents, even those who are on the left, kind of on the left-wing side of the spectrum, were mortified by it. They heard their child being essentially called a born racist, and because of the color of their skin, and that they were essentially a bad person because of the color of their skin.
Critical race theory is this idea that fundamentally you are a racist. If you're a white person, you're a racist, and you really can never get over it. The stain of racism stays with you forever. And this goes off into all kinds of different directions on what white people will owe to minorities, in particular the black population. And it's a very frustrating thing to be confronted by if you're told you're a permanent racist. And no matter what you do, there's no redemption for you.
I think one of the most heartening things about our current debates about critical race theory is how parents across the country have started to respond and to react. They're showing up at school board meetings.
Racism in America would by and large be dead today if it were not for certain people and institutions keeping it on life support.
Comment on the critical race theorist activists who have fought back against the parents speaking out against critical race theorists.
The blowback to those who are fighting against critical race theory has been oftentimes vicious, and much of it led by powerful public sector teachers unions. And NEA has in fact even sued a parent, Nicole Solas, for trying to using public information requests to find out if critical race theory is in her school, is in her child's school. They've actually sued a parent over this personally.
Critics note that critical race theory is just the latest offshoot of cultural Marxism.
You're dealing with this neo-Marxist ideology that views the world through the lens of oppressors and the oppressed. And that critical refers to what you do when you identify the sources of the oppression and try to apply these theories in order to bring about a revolutionary political change. The old definition of racist had to do with one individual's racism toward another. What these individuals are arguing and what CRT is arguing is that racism is ingrained in and embedded in the systems and structures of our culture.
Critical race theory says if you're white, you're a racist. It's as simple as that, right? You can read any of the critical race theory authors, Ibram Kendi, and they want to bring back racism. They want to bring back discrimination. Ibram Kendi says the only solution to past racism is future racism.
Would you think it's fair to say that critical race theory supposedly is anti-racist, but in reality, it teaches racism?
Critical race theory, even though it calls itself anti-racist, absolutely does teach racism. In fact, the proponents of critical race theory and other similar ideologies, for instance, one academic named Ibram X. Kendi suggests that discrimination in the name of anti-racism is essentially a good thing. That this will make up for past transgressions. This will make up for inequity between various groups. And so it actually argues for a kind of neo-segregationism, where we have to separate various racial groups because of these structural biases, the structural racism. And so in their way, they're saying that to combat racism, we have to be more racist.
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Acts 17:26 says, of one blood, God made all people to live together on the face of the earth. So we've bought a lie throughout the ages that we are divided by skin color, that makes us separate races. That led my uncle, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., to say that we must learn to live together as brothers, and I added sisters, or perish as fools. You can't be a brother or a sister. Maybe you could be a cousin, but not a brother or sister of another race. So that's what's been missing throughout the ages. We are one human race.
But critical race theory insists on dividing people according to the color of their skin. What message does that send to young people who want to fulfill their God-given destiny, regardless of the color of their skin? Consider someone who was terribly disadvantaged, but was not poisoned by the critical race theory message.
I believed in the American dream, and that enabled me to work hard, and I was able to, reach a solid middle-class status.
Carol Swain not only earned a PhD, she became a professor at Princeton and a law professor at Vanderbilt.
Young people today are told that if they are born, with a particular skin color, that America is such an oppressive country that they are a victim. And it's nothing but critical race theory that paints whites as the oppressors and blacks as the victims. And it's not a true American history, because if you look at true American history, some of those former slaves became millionaires. Many of the people that came out of that era went to colleges that did not discriminate. In New England and places like that, there were colleges that admitted blacks. And so you had people going to college, you had them being very prosperous. America, despite its flaws, is the greatest country, in the world. And the poorest black is so far better off than blacks in so many other nations. And most nations, to be born in America is something that people don't realize the value of what they have.
One of the tragedies of critical race theory is how widely it has spread through various institutions in our culture, not just schools, but corporations and the military.
These things have been there, percolating for a long time. It's just that now they've gotten out of the institutions where they, speak in these echo chambers to a more popular format and a more popular audience through not only these books, but also through the training that, many industries have been doing. This sort of sensitivity training that people have had to do.
Critics note that critical race theory is not only bad for society and individuals, it's bad for the human soul.
Critical race theory is a denial of the gospel. Critical race theory says that because I am a white male who grew up in the last half of the 20th century, that I'm a racist. I can't help but be a racist. I will always be a racist. It's a denial of the gospel. We're new creatures. There's neither Jew nor Greek, male nor female, bond nor free. We are new creations in Christ. And it's also a denial of Dr. King's vision of a country where we're judged not by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. If you're going to say, I can't help but be a racist, you're judging me by the color of my skin. That's racism.